Yeah, it works. Uh-oh. Where's my we'll just wing this without presenter mode.
We don't need them.
We don't need presenter mode. Oh yeah. Anyway, kia ora everyone. I'm Jim and this is Thomas.
We're also both known as Richard Head to some people.
Yeah, this is true. So someone who is not in the audience but his co-workers are once said to me, Windows is so fundamentally broken that this isn't interesting to me. And that was Michael Fincham, if anyone. Yeah, that name is known to a lot of people who have ever worked on any server where his home folder still exists. So a little bit about me. I worked for a bunch of logos at various points. I currently work for a logo called PrivSec Consulting. Before I worked for the bunch of logos, I had a life doing other things. So this is probably about my 9th career now. So don't ask me about touring bands between 2006 and 2013, because I'll just cry a little bit. There's approximately 2 graduates of the indie rock to cybersecurity pipeline, and the other one is also in the audience today. I was a former software developer. I was a DEF CON 32 speaker. I'm an active security researcher, a lot of CVEs, some of them with Thomas. Shout out to CERT, who I keep reporting council issues to.
Yeah, and I am Thomas. I have also done things at different logos. The top left one is New Zealand's #1 CTF team. We're upstairs. There's 2 of us today, and I think we're still first. Please. After this, we're going back to it. And yeah, I'm also a senior security consultant at PrivSec. I also did the talk with Jim and did some vols with Jim as well, and my own things, but like, this is a talk together.
Togetherness talk.
Togetherness talk.
So, is this your slide, Thomas? Our speaker notes have gone. So.
Yeah, they've just disappeared.
Yeah.
I'll take this one. So this talk is about a few things. Mainly, like, Microsoft says NTLM is going away. We'll trust their word on it for now. But every NTLM-related bug that we've seen usually leads to something bigger and greater, like, I don't know, RCE, or like taking over an entire organization. So, you know, minor things to look at and have a bit of fun with. It has been a fun ride talking to Microsoft about these things. I mean, they do have a hard job. We talked to some of them before DEF CON, and they're lovely people, and we changed a bunch of slides that were ripping into them, and now
we're slightly less mean about them now.
Yeah.
So, NTLM. We're not going to give it a stupid name. Someone once called SQL injection squealy, and now it's canon. Sorry. It stands for New Technology Lan Manager, and anyone who's ever been a software developer and you like create a new microservice and you call it the new microservice, it pretty much ensures that it's going to be around forever. And it's up there with simple in SNMP and lightweight in LDAP. So NTLM itself is a protocol that was developed in the 90s.
As you can tell, new.
Yeah, very new, like some of you, also developed in the 90s. We got 90s, baby. Oh, you got me 25.
99, technically, just.
Wow, so long. It was preceded by LM, Lan Manager, which was finally removed in Server 2025. It was intended to provide authentication, integrity, and confidentiality to users. Microsoft themselves have said don't use this since roughly 2010. In 2011, there was a DEF CON talk entitled Nail the Coffin Shut, NTLM is Dead. It is now 2024, and it failed to die. So NTLM very helpfully means a few different things. First of all, it means a hash of a password, which is also called NT hash. But then they also called NTLM and NTLM, and if you look at the docs, they kind of just mean both at the same time. It is just an auth mechanism where it sends a message and then the thing sends a challenge back and then there's another challenge and a response, and eventually you can do communications. There's 2 versions of that. There's like V1, which is definitely not used anymore and no one has it enabled on any networks. Yeah, it's gone burgers.
Completely gone
Definitely.
burgers. And V2, which is also meant to be gone burgers or something at some point. I don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it lets you use websites and browse file shares and all that fun stuff.
So some quick definitions before we get stuck into some of the things we found in the Microsoft ecosystem. A hash is basically data that is produced from a one-way function, so you don't have to pass a plain text password around, which is good. something called UNC, which is Universal Naming Convention. So when you access a network share and you do those 2 slashes, that's what that is. HTTP, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, the thing that makes the internet work. And URI, which is a Uniform Resource Identifier, which identifies an action with a program or a string with a program.
And there's a few things that you can do if you steal one. I mean, you can turn it back into the clear text password sometimes and then like use that to get elsewhere onto the network.
You should go talk to Jack about that.
Yeah, talk to Jack about that. I'm sure everyone here uses very strong passwords and uses a password manager, right? They don't just use like, I don't know, what's the season? Is it summer 2024?
Shitsville 2024.
Yeah, it's a Wellington special.
Yeah.
You can also relay it and then impersonate the account that you're relaying to. Mainly, it's just a NT hash, NTLM, and net NTLM v1 special. Sometimes you can do it with NTLM v2. And then you can also just do what we did and take a little screenshot, send it to the MSRC, and then have some fun conversations with them.
Yeah. So, you know, with the deprecation of NTLM, a few CVEs have come out in recent years that have resulted in code execution. In the case of MonicaLink, you can leak them out of Windows themes. You can leak them out of Outlook sound files, and then someone bypassed Microsoft's fix for the sound file issue. WordPad had issues with them. Yeah, we had a couple assigned. We didn't give them a cool name, which I think is a missed opportunity.
We could call it like Steve and Bob.
We could do that. We could also get a logo for some of them, because all the good bugs have
AI-generated logo that looks trashy.
No plagiarism machine. Anyway. So NTLM, it's a host of vulnerabilities. We've kind of established that. And Microsoft basically have said a lot of it is by design and won't fix. And that's one of the bugs we talk about, which is a very odd decision from them. So they're deprecating it with a view to disabling it. So right before DEF CON, we were invited to meet with some of the MSRC, which is the Microsoft Security Reporting Center. Which
mainly they just wanted your slides.
Mainly they wanted the copy of the slides because they were worried that I was introducing bugs to a wider audience that they didn't know about. And one of the bugs hadn't been fixed at the time of DEF CON, so they were worried about me releasing that. And I politely pointed out it had been 90 days, etc., etc. Yeah, so I guess deprecating it is sort of fixing it in Microsoft's land. But given that roughly half the internal environments we come across still have net NTLM v1, the tail on this is going to be very long. And we spoke to one of the triagers who does the recreations at Microsoft. And he said, yeah, deprecated doesn't mean disabled. The tail on this is going to be about 20 years. So, yeah.
And you can probably times that by 2.
Yeah, because it's Microsoft.
Yeah.
And so this felt even more apt after he, confessed that it was going to take a while for Microsoft to do something.
Yeah, so they also say that it's going to be disabled on a future version of Windows 11, which is out. And that just means they've probably just stopped working on it.
It's feature complete, Thomas.
It's feature complete. So Windows and Server 2025 as well will try to use Kerberos first, which is their like new thing from like late 90s. Still new. They didn't put new in the title this time, so maybe they'll have like new Kerberos or something.
I wish.
But it will still fall back to NTLM if that fails. And yeah, they say it will be disabled. Yeah, no, it's not going to be disabled. You can just re-enable it like you can do with like NTLM v1, and I think you can do it with like LSASS with its encrypting passwords in memory still, which has been deprecated for a very long time.
Windows is very good at backwards compatibility, and people like it for that reason.
You can still run DOS executables.
Yeah. So I wonder how the switch to Kerberos is going. So this was from about 2 weeks ago. Code execution in the Kerberos protocol.
Oh, it's only a CVSS 9.8.
Yeah.
It's like a small one, right?
That's hardly a bug. That's more of an informational.
Yeah, and you can't relay Kerberos, right?
Yeah,
No, not like this totally.
So, yeah. Anyway, so a little bit about Responder. Thomas, this is your slide actually. So.
Oh, thanks. So it is a rogue authentication server. You could just spin it up on a box and then there's a couple of things it does. One thing is it will just listen to the network. This is the boring thing. It will listen to the network and then go like, hey, I'm this and that and the other. And then sometimes things will talk to it. The more fun thing you can do is like actual active attacks and then say, hey, go talk to this thing. And you're like, wow, research that I'm doing is actually working.
Yeah.
Or go back to the drawing board and try 5 more times and then eventually get there. But it will talk a bunch of protocols. The main fun ones are 80 and 445. Can also do 443, so like HTTP, SMB, HTTPS. It does like LDAP as well. Yeah, it does a bunch of fun things. Fun little side note, a couple of weeks after I did an internal, I was just reading along the internet and you sent me a thing. Turns out you can do SMB over Quick. So Quick is like this new HTTPS-ish thing. It runs on port 443. And most network administrators, they go, okay, I know SMB, it's terrible. I'm just gonna like disable it on the like outbound network. Yeah, that's not a security control anymore. You could just run a little listener on the internet on UDP port 443, redirect it to SMB, and then you could still get hashes.
Yeah, thank you, Windows.
Thank you, Windows. It's new in Windows 11 and Server 2025 because I just like, years of like people disabling this port. Nah, screw that.
They're doubling down on being Microsoft. So this current obsession with capturing and coercing hashes out of things began a couple of years ago. I was testing an ArcGIS application. I spoke earlier about council software. Councils love this for some weird reason. And so my workmate Ahmad, who is a very, very capable and scary pen tester, basically burned through his collection of ArcGIS O-Days for me, which I will forever be grateful. So it's mapping software beloved by local government. And he suggested that I run Responder on one of our internet servers because I'd found a blind server-side request forgery bug. And he said, run Responder, and pointed at that. And I got a NTLM hash, an NTLM v2 hash out on port 80, which was very confusing to me because, that's a little known byproduct of SSRF. But ArcGIS is running Java on IIS, which one of those technologies is Windows, one of them is kind of not.
Oracle.
But this is the bad boy. This is what it looks like. I don't know when they made this or why they let you import an RSS feed from an external URL that will also give up an NTLM v2 hash. So if you're ever testing ArcGIS, come and see me afterwards. I've got some blind SSRF payloads that I still need to disclose to the maintainers.
Hopefully they're not listening.
Yeah, I hope they're not in this room right now. And yeah, so this is how it's going. This has basically been my obsession and Thomas's to a degree for the last few months. NTLM bugs are so dumb. So
yeah, Windows does have some security controls. They do want you to be safe mostly. I think their lawyers want you to be safe. One of the things is mark of the web. So if you've ever downloaded like a docx or a PowerPoint file and then opened it and it's like, this is from the internet. Are you sure you want to like open this? There's some macros. Are you sure you want to run the macros? And then you click yes, and then a calculator window pops up and then disappears, and then a command prompt.
That seems fine.
That seems fine. Do that, please. But yeah, as you download a file, Windows will go, hey, this file is coming from the internet. I'm going to set this little flag on it saying, when you open it, give all these warnings. If you're just like reopening a file that you've edited later or like from earlier that day, it won't do that. And yeah, it is important when you're testing things to just download it off the internet, or upload it first, download it again, so you can set that flag to make sure you're actually bypassing their security controls. The WordPad issue from a bunch of slides ago, that bypassed it, which was why it was so bad. It was an OLE with a linked object thing, and it would just send your hashes out. And I think it was RCE as well.
Yeah, some of the flavors of the exploit had code execution in them.
Yeah. Also, Git bypasses this. Like, Git doesn't set mark of the web, which is kind of relevant.
But I guess you're kind of downloading code to execute on your machine to use Git.
Yeah. As we get to later, Microsoft doesn't really care about developers.
So another fun thing that Windows does, and this is a screenshot from Windows 11, as you can tell by the beautiful UI.
I love using Java applets on Windows 11. That is something I do daily.
Yeah, and this is basically the settings for how it knows to authenticate to things. The general security settings means that it will try and authenticate to things within the local network. And you can, make it authenticate to absolutely everything by clicking some of those fun and dangerous boxes. Please don't do this.
Or do it for us.
Or do it for us, yeah, for research. And so this is how they want you to be safe. They've basically said, you know, here are the zones, here's the local zone, here's the internet zone. Things on the internet we don't authenticate to without permission, things locally.
And it's mostly not bypassable. We
Yeah,
tried.
if you could bypass this, you'd break Windows, essentially. Okay, so that's enough talk about Windows and Microsoft and stuff. Let's get some hashes out of some things. So we're going to talk about image magic and graphics magic, VLC media player, aspos.net, HiQ PDF, Q does stand for quality, as we'll find out, Java on iOS and Windows, calendars, NuGet and iCredential, and RSS feeds for the 6 people still using them in Outlook, and MS Office, URI handlers, and Outlook, and Git for Windows. So it's commonly said that graphics magic is the safe one. Graphics magic is like the fork version of image magic. It's pretty widely fuzzed. And graphics processing, for anyone who's ever been a pen tester, is a fairly massive attack surface, because if you take something and turn it into something else, there's enough within the protocols and spec to have some fun things. And image magic is widely associated with a series of bug classes called image tragic. But image magic didn't actually leak a hash. The graphics magic did. So if you convert an SVG into anything with a UNC file path, it will quite happily leak a hash when trying to pull in an external resource. It is noted in their documentation as server-side request forgery, but there is nothing about hashes in it, but it's just Windows being Windows.
Yeah, VLC media player also just likes leaking hashes. So you can load a playlist file, and in that playlist file you can say, hey, I've got these songs, they're on these SMB shares, because that's what people do, is listen to music over SMB. Ahmed, he disclosed this a few years ago, and they were like, it's a Windows problem, but yeah, it's kind of also a VLC problem. Like if you're writing a program for Windows, it's kind of your fault-ish, but it's also a Windows problem. It exists anywhere that there's a playlist file. So like iTunes, if you're still using iTunes on Windows, maybe like the 2 of you out there, Windows Media Player, maybe there's 4 of you in the audience that still use Windows Media Player, don't import that playlist file. You might get your password hash stolen. And then VLC also has like a bunch of other protocols that might support NTLM. I don't know. Go hack some stuff. That's your jobs. Aspos.net, yeah. This is a...
Yeah, so this is a doozy. So this is a document processing library in .NET, like C# and the like. And it has a few known documented security issues: SSRF, server-side request forgery, NTLM hash leakage, file inclusion. I mean, they literally front foot it on their website, saying, if you're going to use this, these are the cool hacks you can do.
If it's documented, it's not a security issue.
I've never put
It's your fault.
We warned you. I mean, they front-footed it, so good on them for doing so, I guess. I mean, they're not actually solving any of the problems. They're just telling you that there will be problems if you choose to do this fun thing. So leaking hashes via port 445 is abundant and low value. It's often blocked outbound by sensible system administrators. Port 80 is one of the internet protocols.
And you can do it on 443 now as well.
Hey, thank you, Windows, keeping us safe. So when Windows sees a UNC path that only knows how to do one thing, that's authenticate. So it takes a little bit of work to get it out of HTTP, so let's see what we can do. So at the end of last year, we were looking to buy a house, which was a very exciting thing in itself. And I went to look at the district plan, and I did not want to go to search, but sometimes, you know, when you're like just on the internet and you like click a thing and you're like, oh no, this thing's going to do the thing I think it's going to do. And then you accidentally go and do the thing and you're like, oh, I'm going to tell someone.
Is that a number in my URL? What if I just change it by 1?
Never increment an integer.
No, that's illegal.
Don't do it. Don't
You
do
could go to
crimes.
jail.
Yeah. Ooh. So the thing about council software, and I think it's a shame Hervé, the world's greatest incident responder, is not here, but I've been to CERT 6 times about things I've found in council software. So
far.
If anyone here is from the NCSC and wants to talk to me about the state of our councils, please come and see me. So the thing about council software is it's so niche and weird and often written by people who know councils and the specific requirements of councils, but not necessarily security. So this ISO plan had been pen tested a couple of times, you could just kind of tell. So any pen tester in the audience, every time you come across headless PDF generation, it's an exciting time. Because sometimes you need to turn HTML into PDFs, and there's a few well-known places to kind of look for bugs. So you've got the iframe tag, the portal tag, the embed tag. These tags literally embed external content, which is great, or internal content. If it's happening on the server, it means you can get file read and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So these are all blocked in ISOPlan. And I was like, this has been tested. They've got some security controls going on. Cat pictures were not blocked. And so for some reason, when I generated a PDF of the district plan with this house I was looking at, I just happened to fire up Responder on my server.
By accident, your finger just slipped.
It was so accidental, you have no idea. And then I was just like, is this burp suite? How do I, whoops, I've just entered an image tag pointing to this address. And for some reason, I got a NTLM v2 hash out of ISOPlan, and then I realized this thing was in 45 cancels. And so that was...
Did it help with your house buying?
I lost interest in buying a house at that point. Yeah. So I dug a little bit deeper into what was causing this, because it's one of those .NET applications that councils know and love. And by and large, .NET doesn't give out hashes on port 80, but HiQ PDF did. So I looked into it, the library generating the PDF, over 1 million downloads in NuGet, probably one person 1 million times, maybe. It has a settings.xml file because I downloaded it and had a wee look. And it looks like the default property value for NTLM auth is set to true, which seems like a very dangerous default. And I don't know why this happened, but then I kind of figured out why it happened.
Maybe it's the 3D rendered box art for a thing that doesn't have a physical installation.
This is the very height of technology. The Q stands for security.
Turns out there's lots of PDF generators. All the websites look like this, exactly.
Yeah, we found a couple recently on jobs. That
One's called Winnovative or something.
They're all known hash leakers other than Thomas. Anyway, so yeah, that was fun, and a couple of round trips to cert later. ISOPlan patched it, which was good. So Java on IIS, so Blaze InfoSec did a really good write-up of the underlying intersection of, win.http request, which is the underlying Win32 API that Java will call. It still causes issues in the wild. ArcGIS and GeoServer both have hash leaking issues. And yeah, Blaze InfoSec did a really good write-up explaining it, and they even made a Stack Overflow thing saying, here's a proof of concept file showing that yes, indeed, it used to be that the HTTP URL connection would leak a hash on port 80. It doesn't do it anymore. I suspect someone somewhere has patched something and realized that this is a reasonably unsafe default.
They just turned the true to false in the config file.
I really hope that's what it was. So yeah, any pen tester will identify with this. When you get server-side request forgery on IIS, which is Windows Server, and don't get a hash, it's so good.
Yeah, so Microsoft, they've still got other security controls as well. Even though everything leaks hashes, as we've seen and we'll see more of, they do have more security controls. They've got this little dialogue window that pops up in Office and says, please don't click me, it's so unsafe, don't do that. And you can still just click yes and then it will do whatever. But hey, their lawyers probably said put this in, and then Microsoft devs probably just went, does this count? Can I just do this? And the lawyers went, yep, sure, whatever, you've done something. It's not our risk anymore.
They will quite often put a warning in place instead of fixing the underlying issue.
Which has been their fix for quite a few things.
It's their fix for all our bugs.
Yep. But with that in mind, let's just go and see what we can find. For example, bug number 1.
So iCredentials was the first thing I came across when I had this crazy idea to I heard NTLM was going away and I was like, let's speedrun getting stuff out of it, it'll be a great time. So when I first started getting hashes out on port 80, my immediate thought was, there's got to be something really old under here, something crazy, some banana water, which is what pen testers call when you roll your own authentication mechanisms or encryption stuff. It's not banana water, it's just developers making logic errors. So iCredentials is a base interface for retrieving credentials for web client authentication within .NET. So it's just an interface, but it's used a lot in .NET, and there are some weird anti-patterns throughout the Microsoft ecosystem among all the open source stuff, which I reviewed, which have some weird default fallback. So NuGet Package Manager was the first the first thing we reported to Microsoft. So it's a reasonably integral part of the .NET ecosystem. It's basically a package manager. If you want another piece of code from someone to run on your computer, you can put it in your NuGet config file and run off and fetch it. And it has a lot of advice around storing credentials. They're safe and encrypted in the NuGet config file. However, due to a developer logic error, it falls back to NTLM, which probably was definitely not what they intended.
I mean, maybe they were like, hey, we've got enterprise developers. Maybe you should just use NTLM.
Yeah, maybe they're just authenticating to Azure DevOps or whatever. But the thing here is if you work on a large code base with 500 other .NET developers and you want all their hashes, all you need to do is change the NuGet config file. And it does it on the NuGet restore command, which happens automatically on the repo clone, and it bypasses all the safety checks associated. So yeah, my first bug bounty and my subsequent e-bike came from Microsoft for this one. And they're very, very specific. They're like, yeah, this is how you store them. Yeah, you've got to put credentials in there, not NTLM. And this is what it looks like. You just clone a repository, and you just spin up your little responder, and you click clone. It clones it, no hash. And then NuGet restore, and you have a hash out on port 80. Yay, exciting. So I had to be really, really specific with Microsoft. And as you can see from this comment, this is where it happens. I had to step through the breakpoints with them, showing them exactly where in NuGet it was happening. And then we've been able to recreate this issue. It's like, yeah, I bet you have.
We had a thought after staring at a few NTLM things. What if we just change it to be like an SSRF problem? So server-side request forgery is when you get the server to go and render some content or redirect it to get the AWS credentials. And there are a lot of harmless HTTP interactions in Microsoft products, like RSS and URI schemes. Don't know why I'm mentioning those. And web service in Excel. If you think of these interactions as SSRF, then you can just think of a whole range of other ways to attack it. So let's have a look at all reliable, return redirect to some path. So we thought, what if we just say it's on HTTP anyway. What if we just say, go look at an SMB thing? That won't work. It works. There's just a classic SSRF redirect force protocol change problem here. Browsers, they've thought of it, they've had it in the past, and they just go, hey, it's a dangerous redirect, I'm not following that. What the hell? That shouldn't be on a website. But Microsoft products, it will see the request and go, there is a protocol change. I'm just going to go follow that. So we wrote a little bit of code. It's tiny. It just says basically when you get a request, just go send it off to this responder listener. And then that kind of led us to the second bug, where we stared at a lot of Microsoft URI headers.
Yeah, so every time you install a program on Windows, by and large, it will register a custom URI scheme. And so I wanted to know what URI schemes alert. And it turns out nearly all of them do when you click on them in Outlook, because that's the security control. Don't hack me, it's unsafe. Except Microsoft URI schemes themselves don't actually alert. So I was like, this is great. So the Microsoft Office URI schemes, you click on it from Outlook, and it will just straight up open Microsoft Word, run off, and fetch the remote resource. And MS Office URI schemes love a redirect. So ahead of DEF CON, they hadn't patched it, so they asked us not to spill the beans. So we initially asked people not to watch the following video. It was patched 2 days later. They were a little bit stressed about it. Yeah.
This is why they wanted your slides.
This is why they wanted my slides. They do have some security controls in place. All files open in preview mode. It's not a mark of the web bypass. And you can't put UNC paths in the URI scheme because that's naughty. It'll give you a little error message. And this is what they look like as a URI scheme. MS Word, OFE stands for open for editing. U stands for URL, and then you just give it a URL and it rushes off and grabs it. But you can also force a file extension change. What started life as a docx could be an executable. And this is what it looks like. I'd click this. Would anyone else click this?
It says please.
Yeah, I'd definitely click it. So we're spinning up the redirector and responder, and then, oh, don't click it, don't click it.
Oh, I clicked it, I'm so sorry.
And it opens up Word and steals the hash. So a researcher who gave me a lot of good ideas for this was a guy called Hafei Li, who worked for Checkpoint Research, and he found a bug called MonitorLink, which was kind of in this wheelhouse, so I was pestering him about it. He was very, very helpful and polite and kind. So it kind of gives you a new class of bugs, because this technique allows for a new and different and usually blocked file extension to be loaded. We can maybe do some other stuff. So in here you have what's known as the file moniker, an exclamation mark, and then the composite moniker. So the component object model will look up whatever is after the exclamation mark, which we now potentially control through a redirect. Yeah, so we didn't have a lot of fun with that, but yeah, he agreed that there was a lot of research to go into that, because that would be a good RCE delivery mechanism.
You could go out and do it for us.
Yeah.
And say you're inspired by us.
Yeah, exactly.
So you could also use this redirect trick to bypass other CVEs. So there was this thing back in 2023, discovered by Veronis, where you send an email and you say in the email headers, hey, I'm sharing this thing from this site. And basically it just leaked hashes like there's no tomorrow, like most Microsoft products. And Microsoft was like, let's add a warning. But then what if we just redirected it?
And there was no warning on HTTP because it's just one web request. How bad could it be?
Just one web request. And then, yeah, Microsoft went, huh, that's not great. And yeah, it was just a little calendar invite. I would add your calendar.
I would add your calendar.
Thanks.
Thanks. And yeah, this is what it looks like. Someone sends you a calendar link, you click a calendar link, oh, it didn't load. Got your hash. So, thank you. This is where the fun with the MSRC really started though, because I loved a couple of bugs at this point, and they're just like, oh fuck, it's another one from Jim. So I messaged them and I was like, hello, this was classed as an important bug and accepted for immediate servicing. Can you please let me know if this is eligible for a bounty? I wanted the new flaws or something.
Sorry, mate. Outlook is out of scope.
No, it says here in this link that you sent in the previous email that it is in scope.
Oh yeah, whoops, no, it was, it's a moderate issue.
You just told me that it was important in the same email. I've saved you a click. Here's the screenshot.
Yeah, but like we reclassified it. It's fine. It's a moderate.
They still assigned a CVE and fixed it like straight away. So, you know, wow, yeah, they fixed it really quick for moderate. Anyway, so this is my dog who needed ligament surgery at the time. And the amount of a Microsoft bug bounty for this type of research was pretty much the same cost as her cruciate ligament surgery. So thank you, Microsoft.
If it was rated as important, you would have gotten something.
Yeah. So depressing. Sorry, Lupe. Anyway.
RSS, I mean, you guys probably use RSS, right? People use RSS.
I use it.
You use RSS daily?
Not anymore. This isn't 2007.
You use just Twitter or whatever it's called now. So we were looking at like registered file extensions, and we came across this like OPML file thing, and it's for importing RSS feeds. And the web request would just be made while the warning dialog was shown.
So to be fair, they had put a warning dialog, but you could still leak a hash while the dialog was showing.
Well, they said don't click it. And
Yeah.
you're like, okay.
But something under the hood was like, oh, I want that RSS feed. I want to authenticate to it so bad.
And guess what it would do? It would just redirect and then leak the hash. And then Microsoft, no, they're like moderate.
They're on to my
Everything's
game.
moderate now. Stop getting money from us.
But now we know about the Outlook headers thanks to Veronis and their research. So what happens if you combine the URI schemes and these cool new headers? Outlook has what's known as a feed handler. It registers the feed URI. C4 slides back for that raft of URI schemes. Under normal circumstances, it will prompt to open Outlook and give a warning. But if you put it in a sharing header like the previous CVE we bypassed, it won't warn at all. So this was initially deprioritized as Microsoft because several clicks were involved.
You have to click the on button on your computer.
Yeah,
you have
this
to
is
click
true.
the login button.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, actually it is several clicks. It's a bug, but moderate. Thank you, Microsoft. And that's what it looks like. It's just exactly the same as the calendar sharing one. and just click above to add an RSS feed.
I would click above to add your RSS feed.
Thank you, Thomas. I think we should speed run through this one so we don't go over. We've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, so we looked back at Visual Studio again, and Visual Studio can git clone things. So we looked at Git for Windows, because it used that under the hood, and you can git clone from a whole bunch of things. There's SSH, the normal thing, unorthed HTTP, which is like a public GitHub repo, auth HTTP, which is like a private GitHub repo, or like one that you have like a token to access. You can also git clone from a file path for some reason, and an SMB share for some reason. I don't know. But we looked at the auth HTTP. And the command line is secure by default. You have to put in your creds. But what if we just don't put in creds? It just
falls back to NTLM for some unknown Microsoft reason.
And it's not written in C#. There's no iCredentials there. They just do that.
Yeah, we went around in a few circles trying to figure out where this one came from.
So how does VS Code use it? It uses it via this thing called Get Credential Manager. And it will just happily take care of all for you, which by default passes a blank username and password, and Visual Studio uses that. So we know what happens if you use a blank username and password. It also works with Git submodules, so you don't have to just like have a malicious Git server. You could just use GitHub and then just link it to something else, which is using a private Git server. It also works with like VC package, which uses Git under the hood.
And you can clone NPM repos with Git as well, and it would do the same thing if it was using Visual Studio Git.
And most other IDEs don't do the same thing. So we told Microsoft, and then they came back with this big long response, which basically says, Git cloning from an untrusted source is the same as browsing an untrusted SMB share.
At this point, I stopped the research because I don't think they're a serious company.
So yeah, we spent a while circling. It's like, oh, it's a Visual Studio problem, it's a GCM problem, it's a Git problem, it's a libcurl problem. We don't know where it is, Microsoft don't know where it is, but all they say is, it's not our problem, it's someone else's. Yeah, anything else? It's not a Windows problem, just, you're doing it wrong. So on your next red team, you could maybe convince someone to git clone a thing if you want their hash. I don't know.
But
do what you will with that.
It's been deprecated, so don't even worry.
It's being removed.
So where we ended up with 4 bugs reported to Microsoft. Obviously, that last one's not a bug, so you think about untrusted SMB share. A couple of bounties, and they also offered me swag for the downgrade, which I said no to.
And we got invited to a party.
We did go to a party, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
And obviously, they said the Git thing was not a bug. And one, yes, it's a bug, but it's not a priority. There is some interesting stuff in there that I was trying to work out, but Microsoft, there's so much work. So we have a very rigorous methodology. We have a spreadsheet.
It was a text file.
It was a text file. Yeah. So this is kind of where our research methodology took us. So yeah, anytime you find a URL, that's the best place to start. But it's such a broad attack surface, and I still think there's a lot of bugs in these hills for anyone who's kind of interested in this space.
Just, yeah, if it runs on Windows, it probably...
You can probably get a hash out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so feel free to suggest things after this. And if you're on the blue team side of things, go and just turn off NTLM if you haven't already, everywhere you see it.
And don't just turn off SMB because Microsoft did it.
Yeah, they fixed that for you. Yeah. Anyway, finding bugs doesn't happen in isolation, so thanks to all those people on the list and all the other ones who have listened to us.
And thanks to Chickhole as well
for
having us here.
Really important thing to note is hacking is a team sport, and none of this research could have happened or taken place without everyone writing up their bugs. So if you're a security researcher, please keep blogging about it, talking about it. You know, we can't do any of it without other research.
Don't let Microsoft strong arm you into not posting it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if you have ideas about where to look, please come and let us know. Cool. Thanks. Everyone.
Busted.